University. He is also the executive director of Baro Tursa Institute, which is an Oromia policy think tank. The fourth one is Dr. Benya Ugaza, the former president of OSA. Therefore, you know all him. He is a researcher in health sciences. He is a very productive publisher. He publishes several journal articles. So that's enough introduction. What I want all of you to talk about 15 minutes. So I would like somebody to help me with the. I'm helping with the Dr. Ambisa. Yeah, take time. When I get closer to 5 minutes, tell me. Where is the Daniel? Where is my PowerPoint presentation? The title of my topic is the theme is Oromia, as you already heard, the cost for decolonization, sovereign state, and a bright future. My title is The Necessity of the Rebirth of Sovereign and Democratic Oromia. I wanted to have PowerPoint presentation. Nobody's showing it, so I'm going to talk regardless of that. No, it's going today, as many of you know, there are 193 countries in the world. These countries were born in the last 500 years. Only 22 countries have more population more than the Oromo people. Can you imagine? Only 22 countries have more population than the Oromo nation, which is estimated between 50 and 60 million. Since 1990, 32 new countries emerged, and 10 more countries will emerge within 10 years. So we have asked ourselves, can will be the 11th one? Can Oromia will be the 11th nation that will be created? So, so I propose that with other Oromo nationalities should plan and act to make Oromia the 11th nation that will be born within a decade. I provide 4 major reasons why the Oromo national struggle should result in recreating a sovereign and democratic Oromia, which will be a member of the United Nations. There are 4 reasons for that: historical reasons, Ethiopian colonialism, terrorism, genocide, and continuing political repression and exploitation. The third one is Ethiopianism and vis-a-vis Oromo. The fourth one is the United Nations international law. Because of all these reasons, Oromia should be born as a new nation. Between 1522 and 1618, the Oromo fought 12 towers, which is 96 years, to recover and re-establish the Oromo country that was called Oromoze, today Oromia. The Oromo fought against the Christian and the Muslim empire builders who want to destroy Oromo. And they fought for 96 years, defeated both of them, and re-established Oromia by rejoining the Oromo people and their lost territories. One scholar who is specialist on Horn Africa, her name is Virginia Ruling, says, quote, from the mid-16th to the mid-19th century, the Oromo were dominant and on their own territories. No people of other cultures were in a position to exercise compulsion on them. Unquote. Slide is already on. Okay, thank you. We have this thing. It's not working. So all Oromo lived under one Gada government. One Gada government. I don't know how many of you know that. And later built a confederation of confederations. After the mid-17th century, different Oromo groups started to have autonomous Gada government after establishing their territory, after their numbers increased. These autonomous governments formed alliances, federations, or confederations to maintain their political and cultural solidarity and to defend their security and interests from their common enemies. In the first half of the 19th century, the sovereign Oromo people were administered by Gada governments and multi-states or kingdoms. The multi-system created a division among Oromo society and the formed self-centered leaders who could do anything to promote their individual interests. Governor was one of such leaders who created Ethiopianized Oromos, which have become the enemy of Oromo sovereignty and the democracy until today. Governor was an emblem of Oromo defeat and the hero of the Ethiopianized Oromos who claimed that their forefathers created Ethiopia. The alliance of European colonial powers, Ethiopian colonialism, and an Ethiopianized Oromo class ended the existence of sovereign and democratic Oromo. In fact, the Habasha warlords built the Ethiopian empire on the destruction of Oromia and Oromo society during the last decades of the 19th century. Through the Amarized or Ethiopianized Oromo general, Governor Dace, Menelik made some Oromo leaders his collaborators. In this process, the Oromo identity, language, culture, democracy were deleted or suppressed. Successive Ethiopian governments have used Oromo mercenaries or collaborators to continue to terrorize, dominate, dehumanize, and exploit Oromo society. This is being used as firewood, not nation builders, for building and maintaining the Ethiopian empire. The colonial government created and developed 5 institutions in Oromia, which are not to be explained in detail here. The first one is the Katamas, the Rishon House, which Filipina is the center of it. Slavery. Many Oromos claim that we were not enslaved, but in fact they were enslaved. Some people are enslaved. The Arabat system and Oromo collaborative class. The Naptanya Gabar system and the colonial land holding system. This can be 2 or 5 books by themselves. We cannot explain them here today. The successive government of Haile Selassie, Mengistu Haile Mariam, Mallet Zenawi, Haile Mariam Desalegn, and Abiy Ahmed have continued state terrorism, repression, gross human rights violation, and economic exploitation of Oromo society. The Ethiopian authoritarian terrorist regime. The Ethiopian government is really not a government. It is an authoritarian terrorist state characterized by 3 main points: militarization, repression, financial repression, tight control of foreign aid, domestic financial resources. 3, direct ownership and control all aspects of state, including the security and the military institutions, judiciary and the public bodies, and the financial institutions. These are not government, these are mafia, organized to exploit, loot, right people. Through its educational institutions, the Ethiopian political system has produced a small number of Ethiopianized Oromos who become collaborators. Most of our educated people are Ethiopianized and the collaborators of the Ethiopian colonial system. The colonial design intentionally limited the number of educated Oromos by denying education to the overwhelming majority of Oromo people. And it's by training only two people who were prepared to be collaborators. The Ethiopian government has disconnected most of the few educated in the historical roots through various political, educational, and cultural mechanisms such as assimilation, political marriage, religion, divide and conquer policies, and the continuously forcing them to be loyal to the Nigerian class. A few Oromo nationalists have rebelled against Ethiopian colonialism and engaged in the Oromo liberation struggle. Their numbers are very few who have made the sacrifice to make Oromo to exist today. Successive Ethiopian governments have targeted the Oromo nationalists because of Oromo nationalism and other Oromos because of their resources and their refusal to submit to the others to colonial orders. Ethiopianism is Oroma. This is a very important thing. This is Ethiopianism is a concept that changed the Oromo of educated elites. The Ethiopian colonial state uses the ideology of Ethiopianism, which is contradictory to national Oroma, which I call national Oroma, Oromo-centric history, culture, and nationalism. Oromo nationalism cannot capture the struggle of the Oromo people, therefore I call it national Oromo. This ideology explains Ethiopianism, explains and justifies the formation of the Ethiopian empire. It denies the colonization of the Oromo. They always deny that Oromos were not colonized. They were freely incorporated into Ethiopia. The ideology of Ethiopianism explains and justifies that. The Ethiopian state has effectively used Ethiopianism to hide the crimes against humanity. We are not Ethiopians. They call us Ethiopians, but they kill us, they murder us, they loot our resources. Okay, thank you. Today, Ethiopian Oromo who defend the Ethiopian empire are either politically misguided or opportunists who sacrifice the Oromo national interest for their national interest. The Ethiopianized Oromo elites call themselves Ethiopians, the identity that true in the revolutionary Oromo nationalists reject. If colonized people around the world didn't abandon their indigenous identity, why do Oromo elites call themselves Ethiopians? This is a very serious question to be answered. The only way to the liberation of Oromo society is building the Oromo national movement, which is based on the ideology of national Oromo, Oromo-centric history, worldview, culture, nationalism, and egalitarian democracy. Without the decolonization of Oromo and the defeat of Ethiopianism, the Oromo people cannot be free. Oromia deserves national self-determination, which is internationally accepted political principle. The United Nations recognizes the desire of every people or every nation to determine its destiny, free from dictatorship or control of others, unquote. This is internationally recognized right. However, every nation must deserve it through different mechanisms, mainly through various forms of struggle, particularly through armed struggle in the case of Africa. The principle of national determination is based on the four pillars of the United Nations Declaration. The first one is the right to life, liberty, and security, civil liberty and property rights, third, political and social rights, fourth, economic, social, and cultural rights. If a nation is denied national self-determination, it is universal human rights declaration cannot be respected and cannot be protected. The United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights expands human freedoms if implemented or practiced, otherwise it remains on the paper. Based on the spirit of human rights, the Universal Human Rights Declaration, Amartya Sen suggests 5 types of instrumental freedoms: 1, political freedoms; economic freedoms; 3, social opportunities; 4, transparency guarantees; 5, protective security. None of these rights are protected in the case of Oromo society. None is even today. These 4 reasons, the 4 reasons I have identified, justify the rebirth of a sovereign and a democratic Oromo. The Oromo live under the darkness of ignorance, political slavery, terrorism, Therefore, they are exposed to state terrorism, genocide, and the massive human rights violation. The Oromo deserve popular sovereignty, statehood, egalitarian democracy, and membership in the United Nations to restore their human freedoms and build their capabilities to achieve security, peace, and sustainable development. The human rights of the Oromo people will be protected only if they defend themselves, if we defend ourselves by any means necessary and liberate ourselves. Supporting the Oromo Liberation Army is an act of self-defense that self-respecting Oromos should recognize and contribute their shares. In the capitalist world system, might is right. Only if you have might, if you have power, you will be protected. Oromo democratic and human rights can be restored by building national Oromo national organizational capacity, particularly the Oromo Liberation Army. If some Oromos are determined, not all Oromos, if all of them are good, but only if some Oromos are determined to restore their sovereign and democratic republic of Oromia, there is no force that can stop the Oromo from achieving their liberty. The Oromo Liberation Front and Oromo Liberation Army and all Oromo nationalists should plan and act in unity to achieve Oromian sovereignty and democracy in less than 10 years. We have to plan and act. Victory belongs to those who plan and act. The fate of the Oromo is in the hands of the Oromo people, and we have to be united to achieve our liberty. Thank you for listening. That's one time. Thank you.
How was that? All right. Baay'ee galatooma. Duraan dursee koree OSA fi koree waan kana qindeessee baga waggaa 36ffaa geessanii quunnamtee akkasuma galatooma malee kanaa kennuufii jechuun barbaada. Itti aansuudhaan Itoophiyaan ani harkaa fudhadhe emancipation of the mind to liberate the land for Oromia kan jedhu. Sababa guddaan qaba. Wanni mata duree kana filadheef akkuma argaa jirtan achirratti colonialism and methods of instilling psychology of domination on the colonizing people. In the Lamofamo, the second part is toward the psychology of liberation, emancipation of the land, to liberate the mind, to liberate the land. I'm mixing English and the one Roman doesn't matter to be all. Somebody here that I go to. So one tell you we will talk a little bit about psychology, and I just want to put reasons why we do this. I don't know whether I can. So now only the people who have studied somehow about the mind, how psychology works, is when you control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his actions. You do not have to tell him not to stand here or go yonder. He will find his proper place and he will stay in it. Why I am mentioning this? Oromos in Africa, especially in Horn of Africa, are the largest population. Talking about marginalization, subjugation, exploitation, being killed every day. So there has to be some reason why this is happening to us. How much are we acting against this? So is our mind controlled that we find our proper place all the time and do not move, do not act? So we have to ask ourselves. The second one, in prolonged oppression, the oppressed group willy-nilly internalizes the oppressor without. The oppressor who is not within. They adopt his guidelines and prohibitions. They assimilate his image and his social behavior. The oppressor without becomes an oppressor within. The oppressed becomes agents of their own oppression, engaged in self-destructive behaviors to themselves, their loved ones, and their neighbors. Is this happening in Oromia? That is the reason we have to study ourselves. Knowledge, as you know, is a double-sided sword. It can heal, it can kill. If you overdose in medicine, especially psychology, is not immune disease. So that's why we have to study how the mind control will work. There is psychology of domination, psychology of liberation. What works today in Oromia seems to be the psychology of domination. As Professor Asampa has mentioned it before me, from the mid-16th century to the end of 19th century, the Oromo were dominant in their own territories. No people of other culture would dominate them. We were free, so we could control our destiny. What happened then? Colonialism came in. Colonialism is an act of establishing political and economic domination of foreign power on previously independent free population, like Oromo. It involves control of the country and it is peopled by settlers from a foreign land. And you see that. The end goal of colonization is profit by exploiting the human and economic resource of the colonized people. In the process, the colonizer destroys all independent institutions of the colonized people, imposes its own economic policies, political practices, social, cultural, linguistic, and religious systems on the indigenous population. The experience of the Oromo, I don't repeat what just to out. The experience of the Oromo under colonialism. Abyssinian rulers, the Ethiopian state have destroyed or suppressed indigenous, independent Oromo institutions and our leaders. They replaced them with their own political, economic, cultural, religious, and linguistic institutions and leaders. So they destroyed or suppressed what is ours, they replaced it with their own. They suppressed or destroyed Oromo identity, history, culture, language, and indigenous Oromo outward outlook for themselves, as well as for the world. Fractured Oromo unity and established their own colonial administrative regions, for which we are fighting each other sometimes. And a children here in Anlokana, administrative region, they created an intermediary class which serves their interests. Here is what Fanon says about the intermediary class. The intermediary doesn't lighten the oppression, nor seek to hide the domination. He is the bringer of violence into the home and into the mind of the natives. That is what Abiy is doing. That is what Opidio has been doing for the last so many years. Since Governor, that is actually what is going on. So under colonialism, this is what the Russian Army General who is helping Menelik said. Life of Oromo, which could have become the ideal for philosophers and writers of the 18th century if they had known it, was completely changed. Their peaceful way of life was broken, freedom was lost. The independent, freedom-loving Oromo found themselves under the severe authority of the Abyssinian conquerors. One can argue. So I want to deal with the methods of instilling and sustaining psychology of domination element. There are several scholars who have studied this. Several experts have studied the reasons behind the unhelpful beliefs individuals hold about themselves and their society. They have unhelpful beliefs about the future. One was the omission to they examine the effects of individual and mass conditioning. And when you can need for not about conditioned mind. They tried on animals and human beings. One of the scholars was the conditioned mind. So this is interesting. What is psychology? But I'm not a student of psychology, but I read a lot because of the problem. So this guy, the first person who you see over there, is a Russian guy. He conditioned dogs. So he was giving food to a dog and rings the bell at the same time. Naturally, ringing of bell couldn't call for saliva, right? But because he conditioned the dog, the stimuli is the food and the bell is ringing. Whenever they hear the ringing of the bell, he conditioned. So the human mind can be similarly programmed. So they give you a kind of stimuli, reward and punishment. The other one is political conditioning, mental seduction, and the message. This person studied the other one is the manipulation of human behavior, the war on the mind, the battle for the mind, the thought reform in the psychology of totalitarianism, the modeling of modern man. So what are the methods of instilling, sustaining in the psychology of domination? I just selected a few of them. The first one is an assault on the identity of the person. Force people to start questioning who and what he is and who they were. So Professor Atifa mentioned many Oromos call themselves Ethiopian today. But okay, I will go further. The reason is because we have been forced to ask ourselves, am I Ethiopian or not? So this has got a huge impact on us. Identity and so the other things, other methods are isolating individuals in society from each other. I mentioned about creating regions, so they completely isolate us, so that we denounce our family, friends, colleagues, and also our birth. They destroy existing community and social order. They do not allow you to display your culture and identity, control information. They are the only ones who know everything. They encourage they create an atmosphere where you feel guilt and betray yourself, change the guilt, convincing the victims that their suffering emanates from their own guilt, attributed to their own ideology and wrong action. This is how they are controlling. Compulsion to confess, offer confession as a way of resolving their guilt, which they didn't commit. Create leniency, intentionally create emotional control responses, induce psychological decomposition on an individual person, and bringing people to the breaking point where they betray themselves and they go broken and they work. Another way of re-education. So the person is ultimately called, he is born again. Force people to sign peace petitions and agreements, recruit collaborators to join the so-called peace agreements and peace committees, progress report, they report on how they have been changed, and ultimately they force them to declare a rebirth, a new rebirth. So if you get that in there, right, from Oromia, from Roma, a new rebirth for the Oromo, like becoming citizens. And this is the catastrophe we're in. Professional force and the clouds, professional slaves. The colonizer is never satisfied with buying the land of colonizing people and exploiting their labor. To ensure permanent colonial domination, the colonizer waged simultaneous war of psychological warfare on oppressed. Colonial education produces far too many fools and clowns. Schools are places where they are convinced of their inferiority. So this is what's happening in Rome. We have a lot of professional fools. I'm sorry to say this, I'm not claiming to professionals. We have professors, PhD holders, and anything. But at the same time, they are produced by the colonizer and the the slavery that captures the mind, invading the soul of man, destroying his loyalty to himself, establishing allegiance to forces which destroy him, imprisoning his motivation, perception, aspiration, and identity in a web of anti-self image, generating personal and collective self-destruction is more cruel than the shackles on the wrists and ankles. So institutions that help this, laws and legal law enforcement institutions, governing institutions, economic sectors, educational institutions, cultural linguistic institutions, religious institutions, art, music, movies, theater, fashion, drama, media, neighborhood communities, and family. Is there any hope? Yes. Emancipating the mind. All conditioning live reflexes are involuntary, temporary adjustments to, or they can be unlearned. They are not permanently dead. We can unlearn. So emancipation is free from control, bondage, oppression, slavery, restraint, influence, or power of another person. So what we have to do is discovering ourselves. Reflect on the self. Start with identifying the underdeveloped self. The underdeveloped self encourages people to stick to pre-digested thinking, is like keeping the status quo. These are the things. Underdeveloped self. Underdeveloped self is hindrance to self-emancipation. So we have to critically examine our pre-existing thinking. The existing beliefs, attitudes, thoughts, perceptions, behaviors, and actions that prolong or maintain conditions have to be reviewed. So emancipating the tax file, which goes further, we have to refrain our mind, deal with a comfort zone. It is not easy to deal with it because they break the chain cycles of colonial education by learning through history, culture, and food. And transform itself seeks to inspire the rest, the others, empower the people, and change their living conditions. So if our mind is emancipated, we can transform our society. Here is what Steve Biko says: the most important weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. It is our mind that is in the hands of the Syrians or Ethiopia. That is why many of our people are not acting today in the immediate world. Why is it? The mind is affected. So knowledge is power, and self-knowledge is the most important source of self-confidence, self-definition, and freedom. We don't want to be defined by somebody else. We want to define ourselves. So we need to emancipate your own mind to liberate our own. Can we do it? Yes, you can. Especially if we recognize, resist, and reject the temptations of keeping ourselves in the bondage, the second of mental slavery. Thank you so much. I am speaking.
Ashama,
This is Sunday morning and I'm a preacher. So, so I pray that God's saving for me, right? But I like to talk about church. So, I'm so grateful to the OSA leadership and to Professor Asapa for inviting me to speak on the topic, the moral, ethical, and religious justifications for the liberation of Oromia. Yeah. First one. All right. So the topic I selected under that is, it says stand as free people. All right. So the text I used here comes from Galatians chapter 5. This is a letter of Paul written to the people in Galatia. And he's saying, stand, freedom is what we have in Christ Jesus. Christ has set us free, then stand then as a people and do not allow yourself to become slaves again. So the exhortation of Paul here is, you are already free. God has set you free. The exhortation is, you should stand as free people. That is the premises on which I'm going to speak. I'm not going to preach, as you would imagine, but what I'm trying to do is, I'm a student of theology, a Christian theology, but I also have learned about comparative theology and so on. I'm an Oromo, so the Oromo religion is in my blood. That's in my culture. That's how I grew up hearing things. So I'm trying to relate those things and say, what does religion, the three major religions that the Oromo follow, the Wakafata, Christianity, and Islam. What do they teach us? What do they tell us about us? So the first thing is, we as human beings are created free. We are created equal. The Oromo believe Waka created everything. God is the creator and sustainer of life. And God, when He created us, He has endowed us with gifts. Those gifts are for our benefit, so that we will be able to serve others, and also so that we have our responsibility in life, our responsibility to God, our responsibility to one another, and our responsibility to the created order. So to our environment, to other living creatures. And because the Oromo believe in that, the Oromo always consider God in whatever they do. So they always bless. Their daily social intercourses are immersed, are floating in blessing, it says. Ethics tells us what is right and what is wrong, what should be done, what shouldn't be done, right? Safun man. Safun danga gota. Danga kanini godu, our relationship with God, dange famada. Our relationship with each other is dange famada. And our relationship with environment, with the creative order is dange famada. When we surpass that boundaries, when we break those boundaries, that is what Chubu occurs. That when we are now trespassing, right? And Chubu has to be dealt with. Chubu has to be punished. So God doesn't want us to be insulted. That Chubu in Oromo means sin as well as also injustice. Where does ethics come from? Ethics come from nature, it comes from reason, it comes from philosophy, it comes from religion, right? So even modern ethical thinkings, I'm not an ethicist, I'm not a philosopher, but if you talk to people who are philosophers and ethicists, what you find is all the ethical rules and regulations that we have, these are coming from these different areas. So as a people, we are free. We have freedom. We are entitled to freedom, liberty, and life. And we have the right to defend our liberty. We have to defend ourselves from an oppressor. And the teachings of the religions that we follow, whether it is Islam, Christianity, or Wakafata, teach us about this abundantly, right? God stands with justice. Uban ilma waqati, says Oromo. The truth of God. And Chubu is hated. Chubu would be punished. And even though we transgress, even though people transgress, we see that God is gracious both to the transgressor and the one who is the victim, right? God teaches us to be graceful to one another. That's what we see. As I said, Chubu is when we trespass against God, trespass against our fellow men, and also trespass against the God's creation. In Surah 733, when it talks about injustice or sin, it says, sins and trespasses against truth or reason. As I said earlier, Ugan ilma waqati. So when one nation, one people wants to overlord over the other, or one person tries to overlord one another on the other person, what does he doing? He is saying, God is not your God. I am now replacing that for you. I'll be your God, right? I'm going to take away all this freedom or this liberty or this goodwill that God has given you, and I'm going to overlord over you. And that's why that is injustice. So when that happens, what shall we do? I have a few exhibits. Guys, go ahead. I have three exhibits. One exhibit is from the Universal Human Rights Declaration. Read Article 1, 2, and Article 3 and 4, right? All people are created equal. All people have liberty, security, and slavery or overloading on the other person is a transgression. This is from the Human Rights Declaration. The second one is the preamble to the Declaration of Independence. And I want you to see some of these things. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bonds which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which life, the laws of nature and nature's God entitled them. A distant respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. So when you are under other persons, right, when other person is compelling you, you have to declare your independence. That's what this is talking about. And then the famously always quoted, right? This is like we have rights to live, life, liberty, and happiness. When the government is meant to be securing those rights for you. When the government fails to do that, then it is incumbent on the people to get rid of that government. So we can read more about those things. Then we go to the 4 pillars of the United Nations. The four pillars of the United Nations is peace and security, number 1, human rights, number 2, the rule of law, number 3, and development, number 4. Right? Any government which is not doing this, right, as the previous exhibit shows, it needs to be, right? It should be forced out. That's what I'm saying. And then the other thing is the principles of just law. Would you please? Okay, it's correct now. I want us to. Principles of just law theory was developed by Christian theologians. What does it say? War should be a last resort. War should be only for a just cause. It should be declared by a valid authority. When a valid authority, it doesn't mean like what do you call it? The tyrannical leaders such as Abiy Ahmed. Because in a democratic order, power, authority comes from the people, right? When the people defend themselves, that is the valid authority. And then there should be a probable success, right? Probable success. And I submit to you, if we fight for our freedom, we will be successful. And the other one is proportionality. That means like you shouldn't do what you're not supposed to do. And then that should be an exit strategy. So what do we see from these things? As we all know, the Oromo conquest was accomplished by force, right? And the Oromo had been in bondage for a long while. At the conquest of the Oromo were reduced to half its size, as we know. And then the Oromo livelihood and lives and security and peace was taken away. For a century and a half, the Oromo lived in a bondage, never submitted. But even then, you know what happens. So all those things are very clear. The Oromo quest for equality and for freedom has been quashed so many times. One thing I want to underline is the last fallen. The Ethiopian Empire, and it is stone-headed leaders are incapable of being reformed and cannot and will keep their security and peace. So those of our friends, our colleagues who are telling us the Ethiopian Empire could be reformed, should give up. Yes, sir, I'm done now. I believe the Oromo have the right and the duty to secure their freedom, security, and lasting peace. That wouldn't come from the US, wouldn't come from the UN, wouldn't come from the EU, it wouldn't come from AU. It wouldn't come from anywhere else. The Oromo has no friend other than itself, which is what is keeping us in bondage is ourselves, right? The neo-governance that we have, people who align with invading force just for their belly and who are oppressing us. So the Oromo has to make that determination. We shouldn't look from without. Everything that will come, if it comes, it should be from within. So it is incumbent on the Oromo to get rid of this domination. And only a society. Can you back? Okay. Continue. It should be fine. Oh, okay. All right. Only a society or nation that is prepared for war, built its war capacity, and has a formidable defense force can avert war. Cowardice, giving up, appeasing the tyrants or colonial forces will not secure us peace. We have to understand that. And so, yeah, I'm done. So I'll conclude. Despots has not and will not grant freedom to any nation. It is only the nation which has to set itself free, as I said before. So, in conclusion, the Oromo Liberation Army is the only vanguard force that we have. Whether we like it or not, whether we believe it or not, that's the only force that we have. So it is incumbent on us to stand behind OLA to get this imperial domination, rid of the imperial domination, to set our nation free, and to build a just and democratic order. Finally, I would like to say this last sentence. There is no law of nature, of reason, or of God that justifies the subjugation of the Oromo people and their blood property. None. I know religion has been misused for centuries. As Jamal was talking about, to mess with us, with our thinking, with our belief, with our action. Because if our belief and our mind is controlled, as he was spotting, our action will be controlled. Thank you.
Hello, Dr. Mohari. Do you hear us?
Amma reefanii unmute of godhee sin dhagaha saffaa. Baga nagaan eeddani dhiifama sababa maatii fananii karaa fagoo deemee qaamaan isinii wajjin argamuu hin dandeenye. Maal jette? Daqiiqaa 15 iyyuu fixu dafee wanta qabu. May I share my slides here? Do I have the privilege? Privilege nan qaba. Warri kana qopheessu. Okay, hayyee fayyaa ta'a. Hin mul'ata miti? Baay'ee fayyaa ta'a. Again, as I said, apologies for not being able to join you guys in person. So here is how I have organized my thoughts and talk. First, I will argue using certain facts. Many of you know very well, all of you really know very well that I will use those facts to argue that Ethiopia is incompatible. The very idea of Ethiopian system, is incompatible with development in general, and have kept the Oromo in particular from reaching their productive potentials. I'll then discuss some of the main reasons for this argument that I am making, using my reading of the literature in development economics. Finally, I will propose a potential solution, a formula, if you will, that could produce win-win solutions for all that have a stake in the Ethiopian state. Let's ponder this question. Why are Oromos poor, largely undereducated, dying from preventable diseases and malnutrition in large numbers, migrating, again, in huge numbers to other seemingly less desirable destinations, taking serious risks against their lives? When the Oromo country is largely conducive for agricultural development, rain-fed or irrigation-based, it produces over 60%, by some estimates, of the country's GDP, and contributes well over 75%. I think I have 80% here, in that range anyway. It contributes that much to the country's export earnings, and the Oromo country has a population base that can be harnessed for economic development. And of course, the Oromo people have a reasonably inclusive socio-political and value system that may be considered useful for development. Obviously, I'm not the first person to ponder these questions, nor will I be the last to offer insights that could explain the disconnection, the contradiction, if you will. The simple answer is the Ethiopian state has kept the Oromo from reaching their productive potentials, and it won't serve their economic interests unless it is decolonized. I'll come to the formula that I offer my arguments in some fashion, in some order. Why do I say Ethiopia won't serve the economic interests of the Oromo people? It is essentially because it's a deeply ethnically polarized state, not a mosaic of ethnic diversity as held by the Romanticists. The romantic view of Ethiopia is that it is this great nation, ancient nation, exceptional nation, and it's different ethnic groups
This meeting is being recorded.
Is that it is a deeply ethnically polarized state, and that's the main reason why it is incompatible, or why I argue it is incompatible with development. And of course, we need to distinguish between these ideas: ethnic diversity, ethnic fractionalization even, and ethnic polarization. Without getting into them, let's just sort of distinguish between ethnic diversity and ethnic polarization. Generally speaking, ethnic diversity is considered good for economic development. On the contrary, ethnic polarization is terrible for development. This is what some of us study, quantify even. And there are two main reasons for why ethnic polarization is terrible for development. Two main reasons. The first one is that ethnically polarized societies are constantly engaged in economically devastating conflicts and wars, as we see in Ethiopia. The other channel is that ethnically polarized states such as Ethiopia are highly prone to competitive rent seeking and corruption, which is not good for development. Let's sort of get a little more into the conflict channel with respect to Ethiopia. Let's talk about this channel as it relates to Ethiopia. Ethiopia is a classic example of how or why ethnically polarized societies are constantly engaged in economically destructive wars. In a sense, and to a large extent, Ethiopia's devastating wars are outcomes of the severity of ethnic polarization in the country. It's not a function of ethnic federalism, nor is it hoisted upon the country. I mean, the wars are not hoisted upon the country by overly hedonistic ethnic lords, as some people have argued. But the main reason that Ethiopia is constantly at wars is because it is ethnically polarized. In fact, there is no shortage of wannabe ethnic lords who are looking to stoke the fire for their own benefits, motivated by what political economists call vertical inequality, essentially greed. But that's not the main reason countries like Ethiopia are constantly fighting, are in conflict. The fundamental cause of conflicts in countries like Ethiopia is what economists call, as I said, horizontal inequality or grievance, social grievance. Historians have argued eloquently or convincingly that ethnic polarization is indeed baked into Ethiopia's political fabric. It wasn't invented by some of the famous political leaders that generally are mentioned with respect to why there is civil conflict in Ethiopia based on sort of ethnic affiliation. It wasn't invented by Meles Zenawi or even Lenjo Letta, but it is really deeply embedded in the country's sort of foundation. I try to explain in some of the pieces that I've authored in Foreign Policy and the Global Policy Journal recently in the last few years that indeed.
About 5 minutes.
Okay, the grievance model explains the Ethiopian civil conflict better. Okay, this argument that Ethiopia is a prison of nations and nationalities, this has been with us for as long as I remember anyway. If indeed the romanticists argue, as they argue that hedonistic motivations were the root cause of the conflicts in Ethiopia, the insurgents in Tigray and Oromia would have already buckled under the onslaught from the Ethiopian Defense Forces, the Eritrean Defense Forces, and their allies. As we know, the facts on the ground suggest that the rebel forces had essentially fought these fearsome armies to a draw, albeit with with significant casualty. What I'm trying to say here is that the intensity of the Ethiopian civil conflict suggests, again, based on my readings of the literature on conflicts, there are deep-rooted grievances against the Ethiopian state by these major groups. It's not because somebody sort of misguides or is telling these youths or young people to sort of pick up arms and fight. There are deeper causes, is what I'm trying to argue here. As to the other channel, with respect to the other channel, why Ethiopia is incompatible with development and have kept the Oromo down is this argument that sort of comes out again from the literature in economic development, that ethnically polarized societies are prone to competitive rent seeking. And Ethiopia again stands out as a classic example for this argument. Well-connected firms and individuals accumulate an obscene amount of wealth without creating national wealth. It's not shared prosperity. I don't know how many if you guys know, or how many of you know that Ethiopia today is essentially an oligarchy of a few families. We can count them in our sort of, we can count them. We know who they are, and we sort of know how they accumulated the obscene amount of wealth that they have today. Okay, their wealth comes at the expense of the livelihood. Okay, the expansion of Finfinne, as we know, into the agricultural lands is an example here, or how some of these oligarchs operate in exploiting, in sort of using extractive institutions at the expense of the health of the people that sort of own these resources. The Shakiso gold mine and how it's exploited and how it has left the population behind is another example. Formula, just 1 minute. I have only 2 slides and I will end it, Asafa. What is the formula that can serve the economic interests of the Oromo going forward? Okay, what is a solution? We have outlined this I have outlined this in different writings, and we'll continue to hit this point. It is a confederation of viable, sovereign, and democratic nations in a manner of the EU is what we propose, what I propose here. And each word here is loaded, I know, but we will sort of have to explain what they mean realistically going forward. But for the time being, I'll just outline this as a solution, as a formula that could sort of help the Oromo. The formula, I'll say this, recognizes the essential diversity and, yes, similarity of Ethiopians. Ethiopians, through colonial relationships, yes, have built common institutions, and they can build their common future around these by tweaking them. What I am saying is we can take a lesson from the history of nations that currently constitute the EU, the European Union, who had fought wars, destructive wars for hundreds and hundreds of years, ethnic wars even. But then about 70 years ago, they sort of decided to form some sort of economic integration, and that has worked out very well for these nations that are now member states of the EU. And we don't have any wars that they're fighting now. Okay, no destructive wars have been fought between the member states of the European Union since the formation of after World War II, basically. And importantly, they have achieved price and income convergence for their member states as predicted by economic theory. In other words, they're enjoying the fruits of peace, stability, and economic growth made possible by their economic integration. The lesson here is that these experiences, there are experiences for the nations that currently constitute the unhappy and unequal union called Ethiopia. And thank you for listening. Yeah, Asafa,
Dalaton,
fitadde.
Dalaton.
Madam Khalid, Transtea dan Korea ni kopi ni warna common in Korea actually Papa. So what I'm trying to do today, try to look into what does it mean to exercise the right to self-determination. Okay, so my roadmap, first I'm trying to introduce my objectives, define the process of self-determination, and give you some framework of thinking in terms of particles, how our thinking matters. I will talk briefly, historically, colonialism and particles, and the link between social justice and particles, and also providing some evidence for that. So my primary objective is to explore the relationship between the right of people to self-determination and public development. Second objective is to explore the process in which the right of people to self-determination enhance public development. I want to go into my situation, but I don't have time. So one that I would like to share with you the experience of indigenous people here in the United States of America, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Those countries are one of the democratic countries. Although they are democratic when it comes to indigenous people, it's not helping them. They are behind. So what does mean is democratizing Ethiopia might not be helpful for the Oromos unless the Oromos are self-determined. So if you look into the life expectancy of indigenous people in America, they are about for male 68.6 years. Now Ethiopia is actually 69, which is better than the indigenous people in America. So that tells us what does it mean when you don't have the right to self-determination. So if you look into the dictionaries, self-determination is about freedom, independence, self-governance, sovereignty, self-sufficiency, self-rule, autonomy. Okay, so in health science, we apply both for individuals and also for collective use. It is about promoting communitarianism in terms of collective rights. For example, in terms of UN Charter, it says Article 1, all people have the right to self-determination. By virtue of that right, they are freely determined what the political, economic, social, cultural developments. I added environmental in green because at that time the concept of environmental justice was not very much discussed, but now should be, and it is getting to it. Okay, one of the author which I really deeply appreciate is that he's Canadian indigenous person. He described self-determination as self-determination is the river in which all others' rights swim. the right to life, the right to swim. Okay, so if in order to enhance the overall quality of life, it's necessary to advance the right to self-determination. So as you can see, the social rights, when we talk of social rights, it's about deciding who should be secure, who should be provided some social assistance. In terms of political life, what type of leadership we need to develop? What is the objective of that leadership development? Okay, so cultural right, can we have our own ideological view on certain issues, or do we have to continue thinking in terms of against mindset? When we are thinking in our mindset, we are thinking differently than when we are thinking in terms of defense mindset. Okay, so you remember when we are talking about even when we are greeting each other, Naga Apaya, then we are talking the connection between Paya and Naga, so peace and health. When we are talking into a defense mindset, we might be thinking differently. Okay, so because of the colonial agenda, I'm not recreating the stories. I'm coming from literature developed by World Health Organization. If you can see from the left, see it says governance. At the end of the last point, it shows about health implications. So what it means is governance matters in terms of health of the society. So if you have no control on our governance, we cannot expect of our progress in health. Okay, so when we are talking justice, it's about fair distribution of power and resources. If power and resources are not fairly distributed, one live luxury life and one live in poverty. If poverty means it's disease by itself. Okay, so when we are talking empowerment and social, when we talk about self-determination, we are talking also about empowerment. Can we better understand ourselves, our social realities, if we start to think in our interest? But if somebody is dictating us what we need to think, that German nation colonizing our mind, we are always compromising our needs. So that is what empowerment needs to be. Okay, so as you can see clearly in the Western world, democratic society, governance determines the distribution of power and privileges. Okay, so I'm coming to this chart recently by CDC, US Central Disease Control. They came up that the public health need to be focusing on equity in the society. If there is equity, there is fairness, there is health issues. So they identified 3 things. Okay? Assessment of the problem. We cannot assess things the same way. If we are framing our agenda or question in equity perspective, things we understand, things we see is different than when we are thinking in imperial mind. So that also leads to policy making. What policy? Who need to be saved? Who need to be paying for that resources? Okay, so that is where social justice, equity matters at this point. Okay, so next. Okay, one of the I'd like to share with you one of the author, early researcher who introduced the link between colonialism and public health. His name is Rudolf Virchow. He was assigned to investigate the cause of typhus in Upper Silesia, predominantly Polish, ruled by Germany. And he identified that the relation between colonial pathological social conditions and epidemics. So in fact, he mentioned in detail the way power works, the way race and ethnicity matters, religion, economic status matters, and also literacy. He gave us clearly one founding idea and in his quote. He said, medicine is a social science and politics is nothing but medicine on larger scale. So whether or not Ethiopia will be reformed or disintegrated, we need to make sure, we need to work toward politics to be medicine at a larger scale. So now the question is how it works, how colonialism helps, or how exercise the right of individual helps us to improve. You need to think with me now, like a river flowing from highland area to lowland areas. Can you think that? Okay, so in the top level is about governance. Okay? The rivers flowing from mountainous area. Government legalized structure inequalities. And if you can guess, very clearly you can see legalized inequalities. Which language you speak, which when you come to Ethiopian government, okay, so who prays, okay, who advocates, okay, Ethiopian legal structure, inequalities clearly you can see. The impact of that legalized inequalities gives us different type of citizenship: first-class citizenship, second-class citizenship, and so forth. That are interpreted into poverty, malnutrition, illiteracy, denial of leadership. Okay, that in long term will impact to higher rate of premature deaths and disabilities. Next, please. Okay, so in general, what I don't want to go into detail at this point. Our health is our health is impacted by many social conditions. Our education, our life, whether or not we have enough income. Okay, even our language policy, what language you speak. Okay, if here in America, if I'm not speaking English language, you are unprivileged. Okay, next please. Okay, I'll try my best. Okay, so one thing I need to go into again is when I also look into my mission of applicants, it is protection is one of our role to play. But the issue is who to protect, what cost. Okay, so that all an issue. If you look into the history of Ethiopian public conditions, always you see the Ethiopian government either they fully neglects when it comes to ceremonies, or they see it as an opportunity. For example, if you look into history in Rendabest, when the Menelik conquered Oromia, when Oromo cattle were dying massively, the Menelik army took it as an advantage to conquer the Oromos, because when they lost their cattle, they immediately had conquered. When during HIV/AIDS, 1975-91, they also used neglect or seen an opportunity. Now, you remember when a resettlement program, they got an opportunity to resettle Abyssinian from the north in Oromia and also to the Oromo land. Even today, if you like it or not, okay, do you remember? COVID is killing people massively, or it has been used as an opportunity to prolong the election. Okay, thank you. Election, and so that's what it is. I don't have enough time to say more. Here is an example of that when I'm talking about, I'm not exaggerating, I'm depending on data, what is that? If you look at the blue one is Ethiopia, life expectancy from 1960 to today. Imagine how far the gap between Ethiopia and Kenya, between Ethiopia and Uganda. Okay, until 1990, the gap was so big. When it comes to 1990, when HIV/AIDS occurred, and so the gap narrowed. Now they are very much the same. So that is when Uganda, Kenya, when they were liberated, they invested on their resources accordingly, and they improved their quality of life. Yes. So, okay, this is what, when global world is fighting COVID, Ethiopia is fighting something in the country. Unnecessary expenses, resources, next please. Okay, that's our realities. When they are imprisoning and torturing people, okay? And at the same time, need to understand, this is Dr. Abiy, when he was 14 or so, underage children into the military. That was then and still now. I'm going to finish now. Okay. Okay, this is during COVID again. People are kept in such huge concentration. Risk factor to COVID that they don't care. From the yeah, sorry. Sorry. Okay, the person from the center, he got hepatitis B in prison. Why he was in prison? The third one is they killed the Gada leaders, okay, because they want to deny the Oromo's leadership. Next, please. Okay, they are burning force so that they to introduce to widen 14 seconds. Next, please. So, in conclusion, again, if you don't control your governance, you cannot control, you cannot improve your quality of life. Next. Okay, in general, this main argument on this area. Okay, if you are interested to read more, that's my argument. If you have, if your rights are respected, your quality of life can be improved. And thank you very much.
We have a few minutes. You can ask questions. Tell us whom you are listening. Okay, Master.
Do I have a speaker or because I have also question for the party?
Okay, thank you very much. I thought this panel was an excellent one. I want to thank all of you. I have two questions. The first question is for Professor Assafa and Okochaman. You rightly said in order for the Oromo people to be free, Oromia has to be decolonized, Ethiopianism must be defeated. Oromummaa uffannee Itoophiyaa ofirraatii darbannee uummatatu qabna kan jedhudha. And of course, Professor Assafa, you said maybe one of the 11th nation to be free. So I hope that will be true. On the other hand, we know there are a lot of Oromos who agree that the Oromo people have been repressed for decades, and they struggle for the Oromo people's rights, but they don't go to the extra distance of getting freedom, independent Oromia. They feel that they don't go to that length. So my question is, or my fear is, we will be struggling among each other, some of us pushing to independent Oromia, the others saying, oh, Dignity. I hope you remember that. So how do we get that dream of independent Oromia without, and at the same time maintaining the Oromo unity, because unless we are united and fight the colonizers together, if we fight among each other, one saying one thing, the other saying another thing, that will hurt the Oromo cause. So what do you guys see we need to do in order to do that. And I have another question, a very quick question for Barry. Thank you very much. You said, you're right, you said, in my opinion, in Ethiopia, where ethnic polarization has gone crazy, Ethiopian federalism or ethnic federalism may not work. And you suggested confederation, if I get it right. So that means not dismantling the Ethiopian state, if I'm not wrong. So in other words, are you suggesting we need to keep the Ethiopian state in, we need to keep the Ethiopian state? I have one question for Dr. Valena, but I'll keep it. I'll leave it.
The first question is referred to me. If we remember the Oromo struggle, the pioneering nationalist among us, he remembers that when the Oromo struggle started, a few people, a few nationalists created the Oromo Liberation Front and engineered the Oromo national movement in the modern style. At that time, there were many people who organized against Oromo. Many Oromo joined the Ethiopian socialist movement. Mason resisted against it. Again, the TPLF created OPDO, Ethiopianized Oromos. Masons were also Ethiopianized Oromos. They continue to resist. They are still continuing to resist. But the Oromo struggle has been marching forward. So that's why I say if more, some Oromos determined. I didn't say all Oromos. It's not, doesn't require all Oromos to liberate Oromo. Only people are determined to liberate Oromo. Now we are lucky enough because of the struggle that have been made for almost many years. The new generation of Oromos, the Oromo Liberation Army, are determined to lead the way. The responsibility of all Oromos is to do something, contribute something, money, ideas, whatever it requires, to support them and to reach to the finishing end. Those people are going to be obstacles, and they are going to be defeated. The idea of 50 million Oromos are going to be united to liberate Oromo is a dream. If it happens, great. But now the way it is going is a few determined, selfless people are going to liberate Oromo. It was started by a few. It's going to be achieved by some. Many people are joining now, following the Oromo Liberation Army to contribute to that. The Oromo Liberation Front, the Oromo Liberation Army should be supported. We have to reach our final destiny. We are not going to wait for Ethiopianized Oromos to wake up. They will not wake up. They will continue because it is money. It is a business. People are making money, selling their Oromo land, selling Oromo resources, getting power to reach themselves. They will not stop. Opportunists, traitors, mercenaries going to continue to put obstacles for the Oromo struggle. And some people are not politically conscious. They are not conscious enough. That's why they will be obstacles. Those who are not intentionally against the Oromo, those who are not opposing the Oromo struggle for business purpose, are going to join in march when the Oromo Liberation will continue to show the way. Thank you. Yeah.
No. Oh, okay. Right. So I just want to one question about this one thing. Anything you learn, you will keep it around. You will maintain. If you tolerate coloniality and domination, it means you keep it around. It means you will not be free. for my Oromo brothers and sisters who tolerate the Ethiopian colonial structure of these laws do not prolong the domination, do not hinder social transformation in one group of people. So the problem you mentioned is tolerating what the community has produced. So we become ourselves, self-knowledge, as I said before, is amazing. Like the quote I mentioned before, we have both reproduction of professional courts and crowns, and I'm saying that about the we have a lot of security owners who want to tolerate and maintain the status quo because of their pre-digested thinking, believing that they are Ethiopians even though they are not. Oromo Kenya is a good because so what makes no difference? It is establishment that the company is the oppressor of the sin that is hindering us to move forward. So the oppressor within the place about the nature. No, never to move with the diplomas. So we have to reclaim our independence from the colonial domination, from whatever they have been. So this is possible. Putting the drama, not like the neighborhood, we unjust developed self. Because of the colonial segregation, that is where we have to discover who we are and say we are not in agreement with the definition of us. We define ourselves. Let us define what we are. See, we are going to come now, or we are going to generate. And we define what we are. And anything to be sustained for a longer time will have to go back to the like the so what is the Kali University of Morawa in the person, Rasko to see who are in the Rasko, there is one to make organize all the around that's idea. One mean I think working on that. After Toronto, when you are away the so we continue tolerating the colonial institutions, what they are, what is zero. I think we should not compromise to the other side. Compromise the minimum framework with a certain business and financial integration. That is compromise to provide food to the framework of the line of destruction. So just going to put on the re-compromise the food freedom system. So granted for the two so we have to support really the people who are changed in their life, in their voice. I think they're going to have to give it, they're going to grow, and they have to keep my knowledge. We're going to get it. When you know, like that, they will be able to.
Thank you very much. This has been an excellent panel. Thank you for everyone. I know there's a lot of ideas to be explored. I wish we had more time to go back and forth, but we're just running a little late. Please give them a hand. This has been really excellent.
Unfortunately, we didn't have enough time.
And I'm honored to have the next panelist. This panel is a very interesting panel. The perspective of nation nationalities, their perspective on nation nationality perspective on self-determination. So I'd like to invite the next panelist, Professor Escal Pisa. He'll be leading this panel. If you are in the room, please come so we can set things up for you. Yeah, that's all said.
Right, I'd like to call the panelists to the stage. Seven, and panel is here.
Yes, something.
All right, let's get started. First of all, I'd like to thank you, Mr. President, for selecting self-determination as the theme of this year's convention conference. It's indeed appropriate. Self-determination has been the theme, conference theme that goes out for a number of years. You know that. But this time it's different. It's different because the time has come to exercise that right, and we have, at least as a panel, two reasons. The first is what we all know, that is the country is engulfed by a civil war that resulted from three monumental failures. The first is state building failed after more than a century of efforts to build a cohesive and stable state through assimilation of the various nations and nationalities of Ethiopia. Second, the attempt to construct a political community through accommodation of the grievances of the nations in a multinational federation also failed. And thirdly, the much hoped for democratization was derailed and now replaced by autocratization of politics in the state of Ethiopia. The second issue is the civil war is accompanied by war crimes, crimes against humanity, ethnic cleansing, and genocide. At the moment, the theater of conflict has shifted from the north to the south of the country, but because of the depredations of the civil war and the consequent economic collapse and the exhaustion of the state security apparatus, all of that has demonstrated that the Ethiopian state has no capacity left in it to resolve the problems of the country. So at this stage, any attempt to deny the right of nations to exercise their right to self-determination, the preeminent democratic right, which is codified in the country's constitution and enshrined in international instruments of human rights, will only guarantee continued conflict and essentially state dissolution in the country. So the one thing that is left here, that there is no alternative to addressing the long-standing question of nations. I'm not going to use that word nationalities, nations, to live in peace in a democratic state of their own choosing, and a state that is committed to equality, liberty, and dignity. That the exercise of right of self-determination has no hope. It's not. There's no alternative to it. To peace in a state that is at peace with itself
and at peace with its neighbors, not speaking any particular state. To discuss that, I have assembled the panelists. The first panelist, I guess, you can go in any order, but simply to introduce panelists. Adisalam Vista has a LLB. He's a lawyer by profession. He's worked as economic and international law expert in the permanent mission of Ethiopia to the African Union and the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. He has served as an economic and international law expert in the permanent mission of Ethiopia at the United Nations in New York. Khalif Abdullahi Abdurrahman is an independent researcher working on in the Horn of Africa. He's a member of the London School of Economics Conflict Resolution Program, the Somalia team. He has co-authored many of their publications, including the Somalia Synthesis. He's also a fellow at the Rift Valley Institute, carrying out research for them, and co-authored several of their reports, including Mobility Trusts and Exchange, Somalia and Yemen's cross-border maritime economy, and others. He's authored many reports. Bukro Arjan has a business degree, an MBA in business administration. He has a BSc in manufacturing technology and advanced diploma in metal technology. He's also pursued PhD at Zeppelin University in Germany. He has worked at Adama Science and Technology University as an assistant lecturer. He has worked at the Defense Engineering College as a technical assistant as well. The visa has, I don't want to say this, but I'm going to say it anyways, has a distinguished record of academic achievements. He has an LLB, he has a JD, he also has an SJD. He's currently co-chair of the International Foreign Lawyers Association. So we assembled a distinguished panel, and they will speak in order. If I'm not sure Khalid is there. If he's there, we'll start with him. Khalid, are you there?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we don't know what Khalid is technically. When he is here, let us have him. So we get started with you. The ground rule is that you have 15 minutes. All I ask you to complete in 15 minutes so that we can have discussion afterwards. Khalid, you can go ahead. Can you hear me? Khalid?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ezekiel, are you saying Khalif?
Yeah. Yes, I am saying Khalid. I'm calling you.
Yeah, okay then. Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't hear it properly. Yeah. Okay.
15 minutes. Please try to complete it, wrap it up in 15 minutes. But go ahead.
Okay. Well, 15 minutes to sum up where Ethiopia is heading to is short, but I think I can push in. I couldn't even make it shorter, but let me try. From Somali perspective, Ethiopia has been heading to the same place all the time. Something that's not working is in the end bound to fail. And I say from Somali perspective because that's the one I'm always sure. That's the one that sees Ethiopia as something that is not working together. Currently, however, Ethiopia, I made an analogy, which is like, well, it's always been something like a log traveling through a river, muddy water, like all our rivers, most of rivers are, and heading towards unknown. maybe to a waterfall. There's these men who are called leaders who are squabbling over it, each one wanting to have a prime area within that lock to lead, to be comfortable, whatever you call it. While they don't have a view of where this thing is heading to, the international community, different people sometimes try to guide them, provide them some information of where they're heading to. Limitations, like stop squabbling now, there's something urgent. Or the problem that we have now in Ethiopia is, well, our leaders are fighting, each one trying to win with a brute force. No other way of winning that they know. The international community itself that have guided us is not there for us. They're too busy elsewhere, in Ukraine, in countering China, in the Middle East. A lot of things that have been brewing up, and we become less important. Well, like something that what happened in 1935. So, and we're used to being held by those people, being given limitation by those people, but they're too busy. The other important thing is that Ethiopia have developed over time core nations that have been running the country, and also those core nations are fighting over Ethiopia, the soul of Ethiopia. Where will it go? Will it be federal? Will it be confederation, as you're saying? Will it be, or will it actually be like Yugoslavia? We say goodbye to Ethiopia. Oh, if everything else fails, then a massive Rwanda. That will make Rwanda like what will happen in one state of Ethiopia only if we are not careful. It is actually, when you listen to people who are experts in Ethiopia and who are giving advice to the international community, it's even getting too complex for them. The information you need, Ethiopia at first was only the leadership, and you talk to those leaderships and they told you everything. Now, after 30 years of decentralization, local governments, even though the constitution was not fully implemented, but have actually given Ethiopia a feel of a federal state where there's a lot of states that have their own businesses. And to keep tab on that, the international community have not changed it, but Ethiopia have changed it. That's becoming a problematic for them. They're not getting, or they can't get around the information without huge resources, which they will not get. So Ethiopia is heading to danger, and it might fall over that cliff if the Ethiopians themselves do not come up with a plan. Our government, with the national dialogue, is continuing the same way. We are the government, we are responsible. We give things names, but we'll continue the same way that what happened, trying to think like, well, it's business as usual. That will change the game, but that's not going to happen as well. So we are still heading for that dangerous waterfall. Where the only sure thing that we know is if the Ethiopians do not come together and do not make plans for Ethiopia to become a new Ethiopia, then it will come by basically a brute force, as our leaders know it, and that brute force will go all the way to all the regions, and that's the disaster we are trying to mitigate or trying to avoid. For the Somalis, we've been far from Ethiopia all the time. We've been in the periphery. or the periphery of the peripheries, or as some people call it, double periphery, saying that it's periphery to both Somalia and Ethiopia, so it's double periphery. Double periphery, though, the Somali region, if you look at it, it's at the center of the Horn of Africa, geographically, when you look at it. So, and that has an importance. It has a lot to say of what happens in the Horn of Africa. The Somalis do have aspirations, although they have been defeated a long time ago and they are still fighting. One thing that's very different is that they have been treated differently to, or the way the Ethiopian state treated them was always different. That made them also feel that they are different. They're not part of the elite, they're not part of the center. And have stayed in the periphery, maybe even comfortable in the periphery itself, actually. Not complaining about the brutality, but not complaining actually about the services, the lack of services, the bad leadership, because they think that's anyway it doesn't apply to them. And Ethiopian leader is not their leader anyway. So they sit, if you look at the Oromos and they're looking for their freedom and to break away from Ethiopia, Somalis sit to the left of them. They don't even feel they are part of Ethiopia. So they just feel Ethiopia is an invasion to them. That's still happening and they're trying to resist. What do the Somalis want from Ethiopia? What they aspire to? Well, they want to be an effective member of any state that they are in. That's the norm. On their own terms. Because normally what we have in Ethiopia, people tell you it's good for you. They say, oh, this is what we want, and it's good for you, without asking you. But is it really good for me? Well, I have to say it is good for me. And I think this time, before 1990s, early 1990s, the Somalis have been always, well, we're not part of Ethiopia. I think in the last 30 years, they've tried to say, well, let's try Ethiopia. It might work. So they tried in a way in which they said, what actually makes the other Ethiopia happy? We're part of Ethiopia. We're part of whatever you bring. We're not squabbling. We've tried everything. It looks like it actually costs us more to be Ethiopian for a Somali than actually to break away from Ethiopia. That's the realization people are coming to. So people are saying, well, let's be ourselves now. Let's tell them what's good for us. Let's not care what's good for them. And that's what I mean when they say Ethiopia in Somali terms. Not saying that we are dictating the terms, no, but saying, well, if you want us to be part of Ethiopia, this is what the Ethiopia that we want to looks like. If that fails, then it's back again. Let's be a separate nations. And I think many Ethiopians do not understand what to be a separate nation. But Somalis being close to Djibouti, Somalia, Kenya, and being able even sometimes be a national of these nations as well, understand what to be a different. And I'll give you an example that happened to me actually personally only 2 weeks ago. The fear of Somalis is the continuation of the same thing. What we have over the last 100 years, one's not good. The continuation of it is what we fear. So it's not like we've been waking up by what's happening now in Ethiopia and we think, it's going bad. What are we going to do? No, we're saying, well, Ethiopia has always been bad and it's now getting worse even. So with even the other nations feeling the pain, where we're going to go. So if things are getting worse, will it get worse for us? Well, we don't know really. If it gets worse for the other Ethiopians, will it get worse for us? Or most of Somalis, I'm talking about like on behalf of people saying, what do they feel? I mean, many people do not see if it will make any difference if the rest of Ethiopia gets actually bad. And some people get fear or saying, okay, if it gets bad for them, it might also come to us, which is the common sense thing to think. So what is the common Somali interests within Ethiopia, and how it can be protected or defended? Number one is the order. As Ethiopia is now becoming, well, Tigray is out, and the regions are becoming stronger. What does that mean? Disintegration. So we do want to keep the order, even if the general Ethiopia in the Somali region, even if Ethiopia breaks up. So we don't want the problems to crop into the Somali region. So that's important to us. Security is important to us. And I don't know if you heard, Al-Shabaab have been attacking the Somali region, and hundreds of people on both sides have died in the last week. So we have a problem on the other side, and there have been a fight with the Afars. I think the Oromo front, which is the longest one, is now quiet, and I hope it will be quiet forever. So keeping security internally and also from outside is important to us. The territorial integrity is also important. We border all those states outside and inside, and they all can have claims. So we're not hearing claims, but they can have claims, and so that keeping people together is also important. The cohesion of the community in the mayhem, if anything fails, keeping cohesion of Somalis together is important. And actually, I think the Al-Shabaab attack have shown that there is strong cohesion within the Somali community. They have been facing, unlike in Somalia, in the Somali region, they have been facing a united force of the security forces, the population, and also the government. Despite all the differences in this, they were united. So I hope this continues. The bigger issues will be faced like that. One most important thing which might be missing is leadership and clear direction. So we have a leadership that have been installed by the federal government, and it's more responsible to the federal government than it is to the people. It's hearing what the people are saying, but they know the people have no say in Ethiopia. It is whoever is in Addis that have a say in keeping your position. So we have a problem, and many Somalis are thinking, well, we should have a leader that listens to people more. That would have been if there was a real election, but there was none in Ethiopia. So there's a lot of talk of how we can bolster that. The economy, and you have seen what happened to the Ethiopian birr. The Somalis are partially, maybe 20% or less, immune to that because they are close to Somalia that uses dollar. So some of their economy is dollarized. People keep accounts somewhere else. But in reality, the state does not run the economy. It's the federal government that runs the economy. And when you are not used to run the economy, that also is a problem. A collapse of economy always brings a collapse of the whole society. What do aspire is working together as Somalis, whole Somalis, and the other Ethiopian nationalities, Oromos among the chief, as they are our largest neighbor, with international communities, with regional powers to protect and defend the Somali interests. So us ourselves trying to defend our interests in all the things that I have said above. And I'll come back then, giving an example of how, as a Somalis, we feel. 2 weeks ago, my own sister have come to Addis Ababa from South Africa with what she thought was a go home from Ethiopian embassy with 6 children. My sister have never been in Somalia, have never been in Djibouti, have never been in Somaliland. All her life, her family was within the Somali region of Ethiopia. So she does have no knowledge of Somalia, anywhere in Somalia. So when she came back, she assumed it was easy. So they told her, actually, the embassy did not record this, and therefore we treat it as a false document. So she said, it doesn't matter. I'm now in Ethiopia. My parents are here. Everyone is here of my family. Her brother was just a kilometer away in Bole Mikhail, running a very visible and well-known business in there. So she said, then there's many ways in which you can ascertain my nationality. Well, it looks like the head of the immigration office made a decision that he's going to return her to South Africa. Simple. He didn't care about her police and everything. And people from the Somali region, the people who ascertain nationalities, have called him from the federal government. Basically, he got calls from everywhere. He just refused, because in the end, he said that if I reverse my decision, it means something about me. So I'm not going to reverse my decision. It's better for me if I take her back and ask the embassy to bring her back. 8 days with 6 children she spent in the airport. We didn't want her to go back to South Africa because it's a long journey and we have 6 children here. He didn't even understand that her humanity. And without even us asking anything, the Somali embassy in Addis heard about this, because many people were passing through and trying to help her, heard about this and approached my brother and said, okay, for a humanitarian reason, we can help her. What are you going to do? We give her go homes and she can go to Mogadishu and then come back from Hargeisa. Actually, the security officer, the person who normally they ask who is Ethiopian, verifies for them. After trying many times to tell them that she's Ethiopian, she's well known, you should allow her in, agreed with that. And I said, well, I'm going to pick her from Wachale. They cannot say anything, so she should go around there. That's what happened in the end. She was given, and Ethiopian Airlines were also saying that we'll get into problems if we take her back. I mean, what we were trying to say to them was, well, how would she know how good is the document if Ethiopian Airlines themselves could not know? It was from the embassy. Everyone can say that, but she doesn't know if it was recorded or not. But anyway, she went to Mogadishu and she went in. She's still in there. She's actually refusing to come back to Ethiopia, saying, listen, these guys rejected me. I've never been outside there, but I feel rejected. And that's when her human story, this is how most of Somalis feel. Then the Ethiopians come to us and say, oh, this is Ethiopia. We want to work together. We want to be in confederation, federation, all this. And when people are daily feeling that they're not part of this, that's where they are really. And what Somalis want is for us to come together, and to come together in a way we say where our future, in real terms, we shouldn't be kidding ourselves. Simple.
So I didn't want to cut off in the middle of a very interesting anecdote, but could you wrap it up?
Yeah, I've actually completed, so there.
All right, thank you so much. Anecdotes tell the whole story. Thank you, Howard.
Thank you. Everyone. And I would like to start by thanking for hosting this meeting and for inviting these guys intervening in my voice. And I'd like also to recognize, I think I can see distinguished here and people that I was looking forward to this that I have finally missed. Back to the point, I am going to make your life easier, Mr. Moderator, by limiting myself to 15 minutes, if possible, less. by leading some conceptual discussions on anyways, those areas have been addressed in yesterday's and this morning's discussions, what self-determination is, what those components are. But to give some context on Ethiopia as a springboard, there have been some constraints for Ethiopia be democratized or other options there. Introspecting into those elements, I have tried to articulate those discussions in previous local articles. Ethiopia has exhausted all options, and the only option left is the externalization of self-determination, which is basically to give some highlight on what does Ethiopia have exhausted its all options in keeping quote unquote the empire together. Beyond the formation defect, which many countries, including the US, Germany, Italy, has suffered during their initial stage. But unlike those countries which are managing to address their basic contradictions, more or less their formation defects, they are managing to install a democratic order which they have gradually at least attempted to address their basic contradictions by building a democratic order. But in Ethiopia, there are elites, political elites that consider the installment of a democratic order as a threat to their national survival or elite survival. What a democratic order brings is you cannot impose your own values, your own culture, your own religion, your own identity on others uncontested. And due to that inherent discomfort in a democratic system, the preference of those elites without mentioning by name, their preference has been they were convinced that their interests are better served in either in autocratic system or a dictatorial regime. And if you see the track record, the same elites have been supporting direct lobby, they have been supporting the debt, and now when you see the current regime in Ethiopia, it will not take that much effort in identifying who those group of elites are, because deep inside they are convinced that their interests are better served in a system other than democratic system. That's why I was trying to say in a country where there are elites who consider a democratic order as a threat to their national survival, there is no any ground left to address those basic contradictions. And Ethiopia has exhausted all its options, and there have been discussions if confederation is an option there. But so to take it as an option, you should have a trust in the system where those agreements or contracts will be honored. What has brought us here is the basic contract, the constitution, was not respected, and a constitution that was not respected within the framework of federation, one naturally expect it will be all of a sudden respected within the framework of confederation. And it was tested with the Ethiopian Federation, it was dissolved unilaterally, and now it is more or less final stage. And on self-determination is the constitution. I think some people are in dilemma or in confusion where the constitution, what the constitution has done is simply it has recognized the right for self-determination. The Ethiopian constitution has not created the right for self-determination. It has been there for centuries. On the contrary, those nations, including Tigray, Oromia, Somalia, Walaita, I'm mentioning them because the financials are from. But other nationalities, those existed before the institution called Ethiopia. And they have been enjoying their self-determination, their own faith, their own glory times. And what they have done is they have sacrificed it either by force or by uninformed volition. And whether the constitution is torn down or rejected, the right self-determination will be valid anyways. Back to the main point of discussion. What are the challenges and opportunities? To start with the challenge, I would say it is victim of one's own fortunes. To use the Oromo and the Tigrayan as an example, in those elites by default or by design to maximize their interests, they have been accentuating what their values they have contributed to Ethiopia and integrated the historical perspectives, the values, the source Ethiopia is built upon is the main Tigrayan values, the alphabet, the calendar, the how history, the how the plans or how the plan. That is not that much of importance. And in all Oromian cases, in accentuating what Oromia means to Ethiopia, that has been Ethiopia is the economy. I mean, Oromia is the economic foundation of the Ethiopian empire. Actually, both are correct, but without knowing what they have cemented is those narratives have created not only internal but external. Ethiopia cannot survive without those states, without Oromia, without Tigray and other entities, because those narratives have been propagated for at least for decades. And when you see the external interests, when the US and other countries pronounce themselves, they are concerned with Ethiopia's unity and territorial integrity. The first challenge comes from here. It is a challenge that was created in an attempt to maximize one's representation in one's body in the Ethiopian Federation. That's now in the face for external self-determination. Now it is quite a challenge. And the second challenge is the sentiment of not giving up on Ethiopia from different entities. There are people that I was trying to say without mentioning names. They still come up with there are unexplored options, but all the options are explored. But still, those remain a challenge. To come up to the opportunities. First, predominantly at least as a Tigrayan, the fact that knowing all options are exhausted and every opportunity have been examined or tested, it gives the assurance that there are not what ifs or what could have been, because every opportunity was examined, federation was tested, and it failed miserably. Not because federation doesn't work, but federation is not accommodated within the system where there are a group of this considered the instrument of a federal democratic order as a threat to their national tribal areas as a bloc in furthering their interest. The second is the global geopolitical interests in the world, and including in Ethiopia, there is no any unified position, and there are going to be definitely an alignment of interests within the Ethiopian context. There are group of people that see their values in Russian aggression, which can throughout their history that they can easily associate themselves, and based on their values and their history, there is going to be definitely, it gives an opportunity to explore the possibility of aligning oneself in those geopolitical interests, and this gives the opportunity to further consolidate on the external dimension of self-determination. Just to mention 2 points, the platforms like this, one of my favorite quotes is from Rumi. He has an interesting expression which says, out beyond ideas of right and wrong, there is a field. I will meet you there. And that field is built based on constructive discussion, informed decision, and building strategic partnerships. And platforms like this are better placed to fill that role. But it will be a risk of me to, if I forgot to mention, and to give an honor and to Paul, and to express at least my personal appreciation to the fighters of in Oromia, in Tigray, in Somalia, and the rest of Ethiopia, which they have made a deliberate decision to be buried on the valleys and mountains of their respective land. Because someone was speaking about bondage, they knew that bondage is heavier than this. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everybody. I'm very privileged to be here, and I'm very thankful for the coordinators and particularly Professor Ezekiel Gabsa, who invited me to speak on behalf of some of marginalized nations in Ethiopia. So I'm not a subject matter expert. I'm not in that area of state public education of government and state kind of things, but I'm just speaking on my behalf, what I know, what I understand. But that doesn't mean I understand the pains and the sufferings of the people underground. Sorry. Okay, I'm trying. So I'm just speaking my understanding. It's not, I'm not representing any that group of people. I'm belonging, I'm Walaita, of course, and part of that country of Ethiopia. But yes, I'm uniquely identify myself as Walaita. And I want that people exist. I want that people pursue their goals, their objectives, their passions, their interests, whatever. Their existence is my will, their continuity is my kind of it. I believe in that. So I just accepted his invitation and just trying to share what I thought looks like and what it. And the topic is just what I status of what I thought people quest for self-determination in Ethiopia. This is just kind of case. You have some arguments and self-determination can solve the problem. You already instituted that. their hierarchy of top institutional chains like the world organizations, who gives us rules, regulations to obey, to follow, so that you will make something. But actually, is that happening? Why? If it's not happening, why is this just theoretical thing or is it practical? Self-determination. It's a very big concept, of course. But yes, when I talked about it, because it was in the constitution, it is just now declared is a big enough guiding principle we have to obey. So and it's clear. It's clear. This understanding for humans is not that complex. It is simple. But when it comes to people, it's not like that. So just I try to share you some things. Some of you might not know. Like I know when I was abroad for school, some children are coming and where are you come from? They are asking me because I'm black, so they are interested in particularly Indians. They didn't see black people, but I don't. But they used to come and ask you where I come from. Not only just children, that's also who are in college. They are asking, I'm from Ethiopia. Where is Ethiopia? Oh, you don't know? I'm wondering that everybody knows Ethiopia. But later on, when I enter Ethiopia is such a little known, so some of you, even Ethiopians, would say, might not what I is. But I of course, when I thought, I myself literally learn who we are. We have not a kind of, education that teaches our identity, who we are. So, sorry, so the feeling is that yeah, so when I was in China, I'm just come from rural parts, so I can't speak Amharic. Of course, I didn't speak it, but yeah, there are a lot of discriminations. So, thank you. Okay. Anyhow, so Ethiopia, of course, some of you remove the biggest constituent of Ethiopia. You are saying we are not Ethiopians. So, okay. I can't, I mean, who are Ethiopians? That's the thing. But it's good that nobody distinguish you from me because I know all of you say I'm wrong. All right, and I speak on wrong. You can't say it, but I know. In schools, I just encounter that. So, who Ethiopians are is still there, but now the problem of this, the quest for self-determination, was, resulted in days of so many people, so many young people who want to live. So, yeah. So how then, after many years of war, many years of suffering, yeah, so people are like the poor people are suffering, of course. People who are selling mercenaries, people are selling, things they are trading, they are making money. Okay, anyhow, so the Ethiopians, of course, passed so many difficult times, challenging times. Then, this, the constitution for, self-determination is established, and then what I thought has been, requesting for a long time for their independence, for their, self-ruling themselves, to develop themselves. Nothing, nothing more. So your own scholars are just you want from being independent, from one to rule itself. Nobody determine your fate, your children's fate, or nobody might be as such, responsible for it, of course. But when you demand such things, you are subjected to so many things. So many things. Okay, so I just speak some of these things, and I might be no more than what I just talked about. But what I tell is that kind of loving others, respecting others, and they have their own system, lifestyle, their own system of understanding of the world. Their own way of choosing their leaders, whether king, queen, president, whatever. They have one, but they know who is good, who is bad. They know. It doesn't require you to be educated to know somebody. It doesn't. We all have common invaded automatic understanding who we are. That's natural, human gift that God gave us. To identify who you are, I don't need to be scientist. And that's very beautiful part. So I know many scholars, many educated, yes, of course, school, education is technology. It can, if we use it, it benefits us. If we don't use it correctly, it really can't harm us. But it's a choice. Education is good for everyone. But still, education, or educated people, might not solve the problem. An ordinary person might solve the problem. He is much better. Ethiopians are, living by the hard-working farmers who are using 15th century or backward technologies. Many Ethiopians are like that. So yes, the state in India is, of course, how the state is built. Your state scholars know that, but my understanding of state is, we try to imitate, we try to copy state from, of course, others who really have different deep understanding of the meaning and the importance of the state. What is purpose? Why is it important? It has some very important function that's very essential for humans. Because of humans, of course, behavior and complexity. So the quest for this self-determination in Ethiopia is students' movements. Yes, that is student movements also because students are in school. There are political science students are there. Many disciplines are there. They learn it. Then they try to implement that. They try to, when they understand, then they want to experiment that. So that's extremist. Oh my God, that's good. That's okay. Then you see that's the way Ethiopian constitution is built, and can you move that slide last photo? Yes, that's very important. Yeah. So here is this is the way. This is a way. Governance structure. This is good. Okay, good. I mean, it's okay. We have no other. If it's better, it's good. But this is just kind of things like here's the central chief, or the brain of everything. They create strategy, policy, whatever. That should be implemented. That every kind of state, nation, country, government is like households. I mean, power means like electricity, for example. If there is no electricity, then people, if there is no government, then people might not know about it. So like that, nerdy sort of something. But anyhow, we get a built in that kind of structure. So this is, of course, the structure is based upon. This is I'm talking about after 1994 Constitution, the federal Constitution, the federal arrangement. Before that, it had its own arrangements. So because of the time limitation, I can't. But the very simple thing is, okay, like here is the structure. You want to detach or attach, possible, in at different lives, different settlements. If you go down tier 5, Kabbalist group of people where they are from, they can't support. They can't even support. I will be one group. Then if you got two, four, what are those? Like that. That's possible. That kind, whatever you want, people have the right to decide. People have the right to decide. Usually, this is not, you get the words from, from top to, bottom. It's not coming from bottom to top. So there's a very, disconnection, kind of, nobody legitimizes authorities in top. Or later, didn't, they might now understood, or people even didn't believe, trust there. So there's disconnect between people and this main brain. So the question now is what I thought is the question. Now here they want just minimum, a minimum, they request very, very minimum. They didn't want to detach cessation or what we call it. They just want minimum things. I want to administer myself. I want to be, I don't want to spend my, my life when you are manipulating, when you are, just blocking or whatever kind of thing. I don't want that. I want freedom. Okay. So, but what I thought, requested that this population, this market population, this is very huge. Like, if these people need this, why you don't listen to this? That's a question. So, just final remarks. I can say what's better for you. So that's a question you people who are scholars can discuss. But just my point here at the last remark is that the nations and the nationalities means not Ethiopia. It is just people. Ethiopia is just a name, correct? It's name. Ethiopia. I don't know who gave that name, but it's just a name. We want to change that name, but that we changing that name, that really the question is that, but I know you have to understanding that I can't go that and scale that. But my just thing is that cooperation or partnership between nations and nations is very, very crucial for our collective survival. Hardly an individual can survive alone. Or I mean, living groups, we are interconnected. Thanks to technology, so we might be in the future little reliant on governments. People are not like generations change, technologies define the government, even the very central concept of government. And but meanwhile, that's happening. Why we are not doing something that's really very essential for people, freedom and like that. So I would complete my speech on this, and thank you, Professor Skedosan, and thank you very much.
So I guess we're tired. I'm just not straight for 2 seconds. So that, I don't like to say that I'm kidding now. Well, it's a pleasure to be back again to present for OSA. It's been a few years. OSA at home where we all come back. So I'm very grateful of that. It's putting together this panel on self-determination. I guess there is nothing more timely than self-determination, not only for the Oromo, but the entire number of nations and nationalities in the polity of Ethiopia. So today, I'm talking on the Oromo perspective of self-determination. Just to clarify things, I would like to approach the multiple versions of self-determination rights throughout different times. Because this is a concept that has different meaning to different people or different group of people over time or over a several period of years. So as you might see from my brief PowerPoint, the idea of the concept of self-determination came to existence at least in the mainstream political order following a peace recommendation for World War First when President Woodrow Wilson made his 14-point prescription in 1918 to the Congress as to how to end the war, which was partly focusing on the small territories to govern themselves. And then we immediately traveled to post-World War II idea of self-determination, which was hugely tied to the decolonization project in Africa and other territories that were put, later put under the trusteeship of the United Nations. In the post-1990s, the idea of self-determination came to be hugely understood in the context of environmentalist movement. It became a utility or a tool for poor nations asking for new form of economic order. And recently, a few days ago, we are all aware of the ongoing craziness between the U.S. Supreme Court overturning the fundamental right to abortion. It's now becoming that self-determination is getting a personal, individual meaning, particularly for women's rights, that the state should not be having some sort of monopoly over women's body. So just wanted to mention that because it's the right to self-determination is now becoming part of that presidential discussion. So why does self-determination matter? Why is it an subject? Some people might say there is an alternative of electoral democracy. Why is self-determination a subject that we have to put on the agenda of the world? Obviously, the dispute that we are engaged in is a dispute as to the very essence of the form of the state. We are privileged to have Bonnie here who wrote in the about the invention of the Ethiopian state and how it was manufactured, how it was created, the actors and the players who created the state of Ethiopia. Since the 1880s creation of the Ethiopian state, the form of this state has been subject to a serious political dispute. This is the type of dispute that is not subject to be resolved by election office. So it requires the vote and the determination of each and every single human being who resides in that context territory. So that's why electoral democracy is not substitute the utility that we can find from self-determination. And as a matter of theoretical processing, self-determination is not a right. It's some sort of societal utility that can be put into motion through its own movement. I am personally disappointed when self-determination is referred to as a right, because right is something that's action. Right is something that you go to the court or go to some content entity and ask for its fulfillment. That's not what self-determination is. Self-determination is a utility and a political tool of creating a policy that can govern itself. So the self-determination in the whole region is something that we need to keep an eye on. And what does it mean in that context, in the context of the whole region? So the whole region is still a unique cultural and political territory that's experiencing its own state evolution. The idea of state formation is not still a finalized project in the whole Africa. We have 1993 of the election referendum, the 2011 South Sudan, and still the Somaliland, which is an actively ongoing motion, actively seeking for world recognition. So this is unsettled region. And the Oromo quest for self-determination can also be understood in that context, or through that framework. Now, earlier I mentioned that self-determination is not some sort of actionable right. It's a societal motion, it's a societal movement that would culminate in destroying the existing or deconstructing the existing boundary to form a legitimate, possibly democratic policy that can at least answer some of the basic political questions of the people who live in that territory. So what does this mean for the Oromo politics or for the Oromo quest for democracy? It means that the existing dispute and difference between the Oromo and Ethiopia is something that's not reconciled, something that is mutually exclusive, something that election cannot really resolve. It's also for Oromo, self-determination is not a hope, it's a paradigm, it's a framework of striving day in and day out. It's the process and the means and the end. So, as a distinct body of knowledge for the Oromo, self-determination is not an option that can be triggered when we feel like Ethiopia is not working for us. Or it's not something that, it's not a button that we go through when we're not happy with the existing structure. This is the alpha and omega of where the Oromo quest for self-governance starts and where it ends. So we also feel as a paradigm. I also probably, for the benefit of this presentation, we also can benefit, we can summarize what these reconcilable differences or disputes are look like over a long period of time. So between 1882 to 1974, there was a monarchical state formation, which saw the citizens of that country as a mere product. That's the dispute that was being reflected during the monarchical time. And 1991 was a military regime or formation, which was characterized by great terror, civil war, hunger. These are the unique characteristics of the dispute in the country. It's not a politics, it's not a priority, it's an existential dispute. And 1991 to 2008, which was the last 30 years of EPRDF led regime, there was a hopeful promise of self-governance, which could have led to some form of local autonomy. But the presence of bad governance, gross human rights violation, denial of the constitutional promise had forced the Oromo to resort to what we call the Oromo promise. Now, the constitutional promise of right to self-determination is now turning into an external meaning of self-determination, which is not anymore a discussion about conflict resolution within the existing framework, but the hardcore definition, external definition of self-determination. That's an independence through referendum. And 2018 onward, which is the current craziness, also difficult to characterize what is the form of this state under authoritarian. But what we can understand is that the state is back to its Hobbesian territory or Hobbesian state of nation, which is the powerful exploiting or killing the powerless, neighbors against neighbors, the rich against. That's exactly how the philosopher Thomas Hobbes characterized the relationship between state and governance and its early state of formation. That's where it is way back. In 1991, Ethiopia was trying to evolve from a conflict to some kind of post-conflict. And it was not privileged to achieve that goal in the last years. Now, effectively, meaningfully, returning back to the conflict. So any understanding of self-determination requires to understand that states within the country's political evolution. What is the takeaway from this? I know since yesterday we have been exchanging ideas. We've been exchanging ideas about the Oromo perspective. Self-determination has both substantive content and mechanical content. What do I mean by mechanical content? There are elements that are without the control of the Oromo people. I have our colleagues here from people like whose interest, participation, and whose role is also important in the Oromo political. The logical part of, mobilizing people in the same kind of goal requires its own mechanical understanding. I guess going forward, those specific nuanced questions need to be answered, not only by Romans, but by other people who are in the same kind of situation. finally, what I would like to leave you with is the word of our president, with the wisdom that self-determination is not a mere phrase, it's an imperative of action, which statement we have for is not about the very. This is the typical future that we're going to see. The way things are evolving is exactly where it's heading. It's heading towards a total scenario where human imagination cannot probably pull it out, and we've seen the indications. So the earlier the Oromo people got it together, the earlier the Oromo people map out the substantive and mechanical process of this, it's the better. This is all I have today. Thank you for the call.
Right, thank you all. President. Right, That is here, so we started at 11. Go ahead. No, not that question, let's have logistics here again. We started at 11:50 and we've got an hour and 30 minutes. And we'll end at 1. Well, I was going to say 20, but because I was counting, I was going to say 20, but that's okay. But let's not waste our time. Thank you all. Thank you, Cal and Alex, there. Just for a matter of perspective, is a perspective from all nations on the exercise of self-determination, not the principle, the possibility of exercising the right self-determination. The way we talked about it here is not that this is a constitutional right, but it is really a principle of action. And that you say that at the beginning, at the end, and I say that at the beginning, that we started where we end. It's principle of action, political action. In that respect, I want you to think about these 4 issues as you respond to questions from them. For Khalif, from the Somali perspective, the idea of a double periphery, when it is presented, it looks like it's really negative, right? We're in no man's land, but it actually says that you have 2 options. Either to remain with Ethiopia, and if that doesn't work, look out to Somalia. So that is an option, actually, and an enviable position for the Somali in Ethiopia. Now, in the last 30 years, the Somali in Ethiopia, and I use that word, that phrase advisedly, that the Somalis in Ethiopia were not able to look east to Somalia to exercise that determination. At that time, even though the Somali region was the least integrated part into the Ethiopian state, for the 15 years that they were there, politically, economically, and culturally, they looked back to Ethiopia for the last 30 years. Now that the Somalia state, the Somalia state is basically rising. Would you look at the other option? That's for you, and you can answer that at your leisure. And Salam, thank you for the focusing on external self-determination. That's really important. That for Tigray, in post-genocide Tigray, where the Ethiopian army perpetrated genocide in Tigray, is there any possibility at all? You don't have to a possibility at all, just because the geopolitics does not allow it, that Tigray would choose some other arrangement other than exercising this determination. And for Fikru, you have emotionally communicated what the Walaitans are going through, emphasize that Walaita is an independent state, and what they're asking is simply to get back what they lost. It's not just because it's a constitutional right, it is what they lost. They're trying to get it back. And the region has voted using the Ethiopian constitution as a procedure, but they haven't. How do you propose or imagine Walaita proceeding and Henok? The idea of this, the Horn of Africa region in a state, a fluid state, a state in evolution still. What does that mean for? Keep that in mind. And now the questions. Where is the president? Question.
Question, but raise some of them here.
You want to read it again?
Okay.
Okay, let me select people who ask questions. Plenty over here. And
I do have.
Tufa, and then yourself, and yeah, go ahead and ask your questions.
You guys come over here.
Okay, Lube, and finally, Lube. But make sure your questions short.
Yeah, my question is, I got a chance to ask you a question. I always appreciate your opinion. What I'm asking you is, given the situation we are going through now, since the last 4 years, what would happen to the Oromo if the regime collapses? Would it be really so devastating for the Oromo? Again, given the circumstances or the situations we are going through, we didn't really address that much this part into your presentation, but because I want to hear from your opinion that this is a very, very burning question. There is choice now, because in the context of self-determination, if the regime collapses, really, what would happen to them?
Jamie, Jay.
Mine is rather question to the my question is to the
No.
to the late brother. I don't. Do you read French?
No.
No. Okay. There is a book. It's called Une expédition avec Nebus Minili. It's how many decimated your people. If you could find that book, it's just a horrendous massacre of Malaita people in 1897. So that well.
Thank you very much. Yeah. On the brink.
Yeah, but JJ on the high. Frenchman.
Since morning, may I start?
Yes, please.
Yeah, since morning I heard about self-determination, including this session. I don't know why self-determination is another prescription for the decolonization. When in the country, the French to compute Africa, Algeria, Senegal, Ivory Coast, and some other French colony elected their PDO, the French, took them to the French parties. Those who were selected and to the Paris Parliament for the French colony, as well as the French state. Okay? The French say overseas provinces in Africa. And in that system, the French see the future. They don't want to decolonize once the country they illegally conquered and captured. But many, let's take only one example, Algeria. Algeria has too many educated intellectuals in French become
assimilado. Okay, then those people advocate for the unity of great empire. All right, then what happened? The poor, the janitor, the cleaner, the nurse. Let me finish this one. I never speak. I want to give the background how we are working when we hand out all the self-determination. But those poor people rebelled and bombed the restaurant in Algeria. The same thing happened in French colony, except area. Okay, then that is how self-determination automatically changed to decolonization of Algeria. Our Oromo case and the whole of Africa case, including Walaita, Sidam, and others, the so-called Southern, but those people we were colonized, not only Oromo, and those people, why self-determination? That means a man by a human being and put together, and then self-determination is the one want to go independent, the other stay with his master. Is that the one that stay with his master by self-determination, but he's not free?
We got the question.
Yeah. Now, what no, I want to.
We got the question.
Well, my question is the last speaker possibly satisfied me. Please let me elaborate and explain to me in my very.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, I will give 2 minutes to each of the speakers. Let's start with Ali, and then 2 minutes to each of you to respond to the question. Ali. Well, if you could hear me, if you're want to respond to the question. All right, when you come back, let's start with that. Yeah, just press it.
Thank you. Just to briefly express my perspective, it is not an answer per se. That Shigari was organized at the post genocidal arrangement. Still, it is in the midst of genocide, and definitely the arrangements should not wait until the genocide over, the genocide cannot be over. In the midst of a genocide in that regard, the arrangement that is going to be a viable option is an option that comes from the genocide, and guarantees the people of Tigray that can address their existential question. That is the very essence of entering into any other arrangement in the federation, confederation, or voting for independence. And getting up of what they have said, since the Ethiopian state is incapable of its formation together due to the current people elites that consider a democratic order as a threat to their survival. I don't think there is any other option yet. This is my personal opinion that can be explored within the Ethiopian institution. And one of the opportunities that I have overlooked is that is a framework for a constitutional framework that can regulate the peaceful transition. And unlike what will come with Eritrea, the arrangement was not regulated separation, and we can see what the level of cost that we are suffering, and the constitution can be used as a regulated exit mechanism. That is arrangement I can see from my personal opinion perspective.
Thank you so much. And the group is.
Thank you. Thank you for suggesting that material. I will try to read that, but thanks for this kind of research writers who document that kind of brutal act that was happened on some innocent, people. They are not people. You don't do such things for animals. They are animals. I don't want to say into any measure. But human beings, bad district, very bad district, but very, very kind. I mean, we pass through very challenging, eras, very challenging eras. But comes to those who are really make life live. I think they everywhere in America because they're amazing. So, but what's coming to what I asked with the suffering is but what I can, originally as a professor, you are saying, well, this is case, it's our escape, it's our government, it's very, very structured in that's equivalent to the modern government system. There is our law, rules. It's our monetary system. The market is like it's main point. Before that, there was some things on like we have like shallow. That's something it's a very important means of income for them too, of course. They 9 times they are doing that. And that might be in France or in Europe, that's industrial revolution era. They are just manipulating the government and technology booming state in Europe, but it's also, the great in Africa. The main like 10% of population might be, means of life is based upon that trade. So right now they trade this martial arts, Shabba, monetary food. So if you have that, you can immediately get anything you want. So martial is that is we have means of following. But if there's a problem in entire Africa, people are working on skill, humor, and skill gives the name that's really not equivalent to their skill, their talent, their superficial gift, their super gift that they are given so that they understood they became, now it's okay, but anyway, I just project what I found this case. So it's just a Captain Street, 158,000, 3,000, Crown State, it's 101 single district. What is the meaning? It is many things are there regarding the music. It is what I thought about 7 years. You assume a little nation, which is, fighting 7 years with all the powers he received from Europeans in the technology, the latest technology. He has a very sophisticated technology. He just killed the people. But that doesn't mean, many leaders are like that. They aren't, look now, the other, what we need for the right. They just take their own. That's very minor, right? No, you can't, you have to obey me. That is very sensitive. Thank you.
Sorry.
They can give their answer on break.
We're wasting time. Yeah. Okay.
No.
So, Professor Banti asked about what we have for,
If the state collapse. I think that also depends on how we imagine the state collapse. I do not have a clearly formed imagination of what the collapse is like, but we could like. You get always asked for grab by any community group, a group that is mobilized, that is ready and always capture part of. Second, state continuity is cases that have a lot of support. So what would the collapse practically and the reality looks like with this? But let's just reframe if the collapse is total legal control. That's the first step. Almost over 60% of territories in Libya are not governed by the power that claims to be a government. There is war in the north, in the west, and everywhere. The overwhelming territorial scope of the country is in an active war. Can this be a semi kind of collapse? That's the case. It's possible to respond to the possibility of maintaining regional peace and security by the impact of by the forces that are effectively present on the ground. Up until now, the Oromo Liberation Army is the default force in a fairly distributed amount of territories. Not only acting as a group that's fighting, but also it's also a time to exercise a leadership role. It's a time to show not only deconstructing the state, but also showcasing what it looks like to be a future. That's probably my response to that. The professor was talking about how can we situate the Oromo within the broader region, the whole African evolution of state formation. I mentioned about Somaliland, I mentioned about the level framework of South Sudan, and my point of locating the Oromo quest for the self-determination within the Horn of Africa is to say that this is a region that has a unique evidence that teaches us that state evolution is not over, state formation is not over, it's unsettled territory. And we cannot understand the Oromo without first understanding the whole. And there is the recipe, which is the only product of the security global security partnership. And for the world to understand the geographical issues in the whole, the Oromo quest for self-determination should have been at the forefront. And that's where we have to pigeonhole the Oromo.
No, just one to give the reminder. So, for example, I think there is no one in the most agents.
We want to go to actually frame the issue of the genocide. So I am the forefront. Very much. All right, that's good. All right. Here's, I think, okay. All right, he's done. There's been conversations going on the relations about these issues. Issues of determination, I would say, it's not about like theoretical or principles of self-determination. As Adam earlier said, all the state building attempts and endeavors have failed. There's only one thing that is remaining right now,
So the question here was about the mechanisms. We talk about logistics and the technical issues, the external self-determination, internal self-determination. It's a complex issue, but it is an issue that the time has come. Not talking about it simply as an aspirational viewpoint, but to create a Horn of Africa in which the nations in the Horn of Africa would live in peace in themselves and with their neighbors. What that would take, what form that would take, I cannot say. They have been saying there are forms of federation, national federation, confederation, independent existence, but it's a complex issue. It's an issue this time has come. The discussion continues. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for the detail and the panel. And wonderful tonight, And now we'll go to lunch. As Lucas, we have to shift the schedule a little bit so the following panels will come up. So lunch is ready. And then we'll come back after the lunch. Okay, 2:30. 1:30 right now. 2:30. We'll be back.
Halloo nagaa jirtu? Nagaama taatarii nam tokko sagalee na dhageessisuu dandeessu? Hello, hello. Okay. If you can hear me, then anyways, it is to give you information that those in the conference room are they went for lunch, and I think they will be back for the business meeting very soon, in few minutes time. So we wait until they will be back. Just to give you this information. Thank you.